Well, good morning, Chewy. Here's my sweet girl. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Even though you wounded my hand the other day. But Chewy enjoys being in the shop here with us. So I have a planishing hammer, a shrinker stretcher, a now motor-driven bead roller, an English wheel, a lathe, a banger, and this is my little metal shop for today, where I'm going to work with practicing some bead rolling. First, shrinking it on the planisher, or planishing it to stretch it, I guess, actually. And then running it through the bead roller. Not sure what die I'm going to use yet. But the object of the exercise, oh, and I forgot to mention the sandbag as well as the anvil, of course. But the object of the exercise to reduce the possibility of oil canning on the practice piece. So that's the object. Chewy, meanwhile, is eating rust off the bottom of the planishing hammer, which sits outside in the rain. So maybe we'll work on prepping that today too. Well, as part of my ADD, not only am I going to be doing some metal forming this morning, but I'm going to try and rust remove using vinegar on these 3 drill boxes, plus the remainder of the woodworking bits that I was grinding off rust, but I think I'm going to try and use a vinegar solution and see. Plus I found this cool old square, which I think is worthy of restoration. So I'm going to get things set up and then see what I can do about opening up these boxes which are stuck and finding out how many drill bits are in them. Okay, well that didn't take too long to set things up. Let's set these things aside for a moment or two. Go to work on box number 1. A drill decks. 1 to go. 1 to 60. 1 to go. Huh. Well, that plastic inside cover ooh, nice. Tap drills for pipe tap. And then these are, in the drill decks, they are numbered. Oh, but there's a score at the bottom. All the tiny little drill bits that I don't yet own. So I don't think these are going to go into the vinegar. But that's awesome. I'm having difficulty because of my age and maybe the lack of the lighting, but 49, 60, 59, 58, etc. So they go right down to the drill size of 60. That'll be awesome. This one, again, is a 1/16 to some larger number. Those are pretty rust ridden. I think in this case I might remove these all and consider putting them into the vinegar. And this one says full 1/16 to half, and then by 1/64. I'm not quite sure how to read that either. Here's a similar. Who do you hear? What do you see? Hmm? Is there somebody out there that you're paying attention to? Well, I gotta go back down to the shop, so I'll see you a little bit later, okay? Well, in order to slow down the chemical reaction and to keep the house from being completely stink, I think this is going outside the shop. Right, well, I'm not the brightest of bulbs in the box. This, which I didn't understand before, says 1/16 to 1/2 by increments of 1/64 of an inch. That's what it says on the outside of the box, and I didn't understand that until a few moments ago. I started off this day expecting to do a lot of bead rolling practice, and then I got sidetracked onto this clean up the drill bits box. But as it turns out, that may be fortuitous, because I was struggling a little bit with what pattern should I create to work with the bead roller. I have this piece of 22 gauge steel. That currently lies as flat as my table is. Now, I'm not saying my table is flat, but there's no oil canning or any such thing on this steel. And it occurs to me that creating patterns from these boxes might give me the perfect flanging opportunity. Maybe something like that. So I'll be back once I've figured this out, but this planishing hammer, the air hose, is dramatically flawed. So I'll have to get around to fixing that, but I'm pretty sure it holds air and does what it's supposed to do. I'm going to take the die and clean off the end of the die a little bit. Well, that certainly deformed it. What had been a flat piece of metal is now certainly oil canned. So let's hope that this shrinking, stretching scenario works. Gonna have to adjust the guide on the bead roller. And the planishing hammer most definitely reduced the lines to something less visible. Okay, well, this is the first experiment. I need to mount the spring on the back of this that lifts the bar up so you don't have to do it by hand every time. But right at the moment, we kind of got the offset die kind of where I want it, I guess. I'm going to bring it down to the inside edge. That would be the first rotation. That's the second rotation. That's one. We'll go for one and see what happens here. Okay, a little better, maybe a lot better. Maybe some of the oil canning's coming out too. But what have I got? I've got raised on one side and depressed on the other. Interesting. Okay, so that's the lack of understanding of how the dies work. So in the previous shot, I was unable to understand exactly how the flange of the die works, so in this case I want on the inside of the pattern, I want I think, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to take that guide out, and that's going to require some manipulating, and so we'll be back. Alright, well, the modifications are done and I've swapped the dies around a little bit. Well, it's obvious that bead rolling and metalworking in general is not one of my strengths. But I think now, if I put this in here, right there, it's going to go to forward position. I'm going to clamp it down to about a third. Okay, let's get the first contact point. There's the first contact. 1, 2. Alright, we're just going to go with 2.5. At the end of the day, it deflected, and more importantly, it sort of straightened out the oil canning a touch. Well, having critically butchered this piece of metal, and having sort of stretched it and shrunk it, mostly shrunk it into some kind of shape that's resembling vaguely sort of flat, I'm going to try and bury a flange onto it, and along the four edges, and see if that will help stiffen it up. You think to yourself, oh, I can avoid having to do all the stupid mistakes, but that's not the case. Well, I've gotten sidetracked. I've decided to drill a hole into the center of the lower mounting bolt, tap it with a 1/4 because that's all I've got, although I suspect the rest of this is metric, and then put one of these springs on, lower half of the bolt, then raise it all up and then tap a 1/4 into the top up here and see if that gives me spring action in retracting it. We'll find out. Let's go see if that works. I guess I could use the loosen up the carriage, bring it back to out of danger. Loosen up the chuck, take out my bolt, put the chuck key away, and we're done with the lathe for a while. Okay, well there's the 5/8 inch long 1/4 x 20 bolt into the lower mechanism. Loosen it off a hair. And go see if the spring's got enough strength. Doesn't seem to. So maybe this isn't the correct spring. Right, well, a much stronger spring, but I don't like the direction it's pulling. But I'm unable to make it work quite the way I want it to. Nevertheless, when you crank it down and then you release it, the spring either gently pops it up or well, it may not be a permanent solution, but the clamp here holding quite a strong spring in a pretty much vertical position means that when I roll the bead roller wheels down, they go down, of course, and when I ease it off, they come up, which is the object of the exercise. So happy enough with that for now, as long as the clamp holds. Broke one already. Not sure if I'm going to have this bead rolling done before the battery goes, but this is the first bead after. Let's go use the inside edge. First bead after the spring mechanism. There's first contact. There's half turn, 1 turn, 1.5 turns. Well, an instructive day. Still oil canned and still not nearly flat. But I got a feeling that if I were to put a shrinker on this edge soon, that it would work. I might just give that a try.